And I think if you want to put media into perspective, then you probably can't get a better voice than Ekta Kapoor of BALAJI. She joins in right now to speak about her perspective of how she sees the developments over the last 3 months. Have they had a seismic change effect over the industry? And how would the next 9, 12, 18 months look like? Ekta, great having you. Thanks so much for joining in. Hope all is safe.
Thank you for having me on. Niraj, and yeah, all is safe.
Touchwood. Okay, so what's your sense on the big change that a lot of people talk about that the last 3 months of COVID have had on the media industry and on the way people are consuming content?
So we had a production halt when COVID struck. Television went into either old programming or they showed some of digital content on their television channels. Because no one had, it's been unprecedented. It was an absolute shock to have production stop. But on the other hand, the OTT platform gained a lot of subscriptions. There was a lot of content in our library, Hindi content that became interesting for us. That a lot of that content which we thought we were putting out every month, and we were putting out mid-impact and low-impact volume content, but all that volume got viewed. So it really worked for us on one side, and on one side, our cost-plus model, that is BALAJI TeleFilms, was a bit affected because for 3 months we had a production halt.
Yeah. Please carry on.
Understanding, but what we, on a psychological level, happened was that there was a complete shift in consumption of content, not only in the urban Indian audiences, but also in the masses.
Would you elaborate a bit on that? I mean, the obvious one is that, please carry on.
Yeah. So while television was the first and primary viewing pattern as far as the everyday viewing goes and everyday content consumption goes, the OTT platforms took center stage. Suddenly data consumption started and people started subscribing to apps, not only in the urban and high income grade audiences, but even in the medium income grade audiences and lower income grade audiences. There was a huge shift because of lack of television content to watching content on apps, which resulted in what we were wanting to do, which we thought would take a year and a half more, was building a new format, a new type of content consumption. Because primarily the reason BALAJI started an app was because we believe that while there is a complete family viewing and communal viewing is taken care of with films and television, individual viewing is a big viewing pattern and content consumption pattern that's going to come into play, wherein people will want to watch shows which they can watch all alone. And there the OTT platform will take center stage. That format of consumption or that switch from television to digital happened now far more aggressively.
You think it's here to stay, or would a lot of people switch back because that was a bit of a compulsion, right? People didn't have a choice and therefore they did
this. So I'll put it this way. When we started the app in 2017, we didn't know the pandemic would hit, but we knew that there is going to be, in a couple of years, a shift from watching one-size-fits-all content on television, because you clearly can't give radical content on television. People will watch things with their family differently than what they watch alone. And we knew that the masses and the classes would require content that they can watch alone. And you have your individual playlists or you have your own phone number. You can have a landline, but people like personalized communication and personalized content. And that would come into play once we have an OTT platform and you're not being judged for what you're watching. It's only been accelerated by the pandemic. It's not that the pandemic caused it. So I think things are going to go back to normal, but there will be a lot of shift as far as you can't go back to innocence after losing it. We're going to be now clearly more adept at watching what we can. Like the iPod came and suddenly you knew that you could have all your favorite songs on your own phone. And then came the music apps and you shift it. You didn't go back. You're consuming the same songs or same type of song. Now you don't have to share your music with anyone else. You have to have the song that your family wants to hear. Similar thought process.
Okay, so in which case, what's the business case out here for both? Right? Because a lot of app players that I speak to, people who develop content for these the BALAJI's, Netflix, I'm using all of those terminologies, not singling out anybody, say that it's almost been a bit of a shift change over the last 12 months for them, and they believe their business is booming. But I'm guessing that the television audience might still be there. So what's the business case for both?
So I'm looking at this in a family. There are about 5 or 6 viewers. The one family viewer that used to love and enjoy television was the older one. And automatically the rest of the family should sit and watch that show with them. Because everyone was watching television together, it could not be radical, customized. It could not be with individual taste taken into consideration. It had to be simple, vanilla, and so that it doesn't hurt any sentiments because you're entering people's homes. And we all know, we all have a family face. We have a family face, we have a friend face, and we have an individual face. Things like 3 different personalities in most lives, So automatically, you are going to let that stay. TV is going to come back, and that family audience is going to stay. So yes, there is a boom, because when 4 other family members have now decided, I want to watch action, I want to watch just a youth show, or I want to watch a really radical thought process, social political drama, automatically I have now created 4 viewers out of that 1 viewer. That does not eat into anyone's market. It just creates 4 more markets, 4 more streams of content consumption. And then it's a boom boom for the production units, and it's a boom boom. No, it's a boom for platforms. That was all wrong, yeah.
Oh, that's fine. So then how do you juxtapose this need for multiple content, right? If we get created 4 viewers out of 1 or 3 viewers out of 1, as the case may be, how do you juxtapose that against the fact that the content cost is high, the ability of the consumer to pay may not necessarily be as high? Or do you believe that is not a problem because the cost of all the few apps and the television application necessarily is not very high?
I think mostly you will have a lot of content, films, digital, and a lot of tastes which are slightly more urban on very expensive apps. And you will have apps like ours which cater to the masses, which will clearly not look into consideration of making one show for the urban audience, because we're not charging 600 or 800 rupees a month. So the price sensitivity will create its own audience sections, and going to be a big part of the content play, because you can't create content at 1 crore, 2 crores per episode and make 50 shows like that and charge 300 rupees a year. So that's why our attempt is to make mostly mid impact, low impact, volume content for the masses and be price sensitive.
And I think it's worked for you, right? Because I presume, if I looked at the numbers, the first 6 months of the year have been terrific for ALTBalaji. Can you talk a bit about that?
So so our strategy was very clear. We would not steer clear, but we saw the way Verdict, Bose, and a lot of the urban shows did on our app. They did well, but the ROIs vis-a-vis the mid-level, mid-impact, small impact shows was far. It was far better to do dramas, youth shows, and thrillers, and even some of the sexual content worked far better, which was mid-impact and low impact as far as ROI goes. So we clearly said that we're not going to cannibalize or try to compete the international apps. We know the mass market well here. We know the need for individual programming in the mass market, and that will be our main primary audience we're going to cater to. Secondly, we're going to offset some of the costs by getting a partner on who has also got a huge market, but a diverse market. They have more international, more women, we have more youth and men. And so we will have a bigger play as far as our content also goes. And we would at the same time, without eating into each other's market, get direct subs for both apps. Somehow it worked.
Somehow. No, it's an ingenious strategy because I don't think too many people have tried this as well. So but
it's a bit of a understanding that this 1.3 billion population out there is so vast that we have not even tipped the content explosion and the OTT explosion in India.
Okay. Would that be the thought process where when, for example, if somebody looks at your business, right, the console business, and looks at how Balaji Tele is the cash cow, giving in the bit-up gains, and all Balaji 4 now is draining it, that wait for a few years, and then the multiplier effect comes into play? And any idea about how long, etc.?
So the investors are usually the devil's advocate. I look at them as like that. Because if you ask them that, okay, we have a huge cash-rich business, they would be like, what about scalability? What about value creation? What about B2C? Now, when you create a B2C and you create valuation-led businesses, they're like, what about EBITDA? So it's like that you get, it's not a win-win, but the fact of the matter is you have to balance both. You have to have a good top line and a bottom line, and then create a B2C business that doesn't eat up all the money that you have as reserves, you know. So if you see that we clearly didn't we built the app slowly. We had, even though we've created about 60 originals, our expenditure was very, very smartly priced because we didn't charge too much from the viewer, so we would not be able to make very, very expensive shows. We gave some of the business to Balaji TeleFilms, so their top line went up. And they instead gave us high quality content. Yet there was an arm's length acceptance of the content, because if it was not good, we would definitely not take it for Balaji. But the fact is that the two companies ate out of each other's strengths.
Yeah, and you see this obviously continuing because they are both sides of the same coin, so to say. But still, I mean, just looking for an answer to how long do you believe this runway would be before, in your estimate, if it's possible to guesstimate, that old Balaji kind of turns the corner, considering that you have a very tight handle on the cost anyway.
I think if you see it now, we're only a couple of lakhs down. We don't even, which means we're supposed to be in green. But I don't know if I should look at the business that way. You know, if you really have to keep the market, you have to think of investing more into old Balaji and then looking at better returns than thinking of not putting out that much content. So we have a great partner. We've got costs taken care of, and we're trying to build bigger libraries. But yes, it's going to be always between getting more of the market share and keeping yourself in the green. So somewhere between the two will balance the company out.
Yeah, no. I mean, I was nowhere trying to indicate that you should do X over Y. I'm just trying to get your sense out there.
No, I guess I understood it, Rajit. So yeah, there is a cash draining company like old Balaji. I need to turn it profitable. If not profitable, I need to build direct subs and offset some of the costs by getting a partner. But I also need to get a bigger market share, so I have to invest more. So that midpoint where how much more can I invest depends on how many subscribers I've earned in that quarter.
Sure. Okay. Now, excuse me for presuming something, but I would presume that your experience of what you've done on television, you know that audience set very, very well, and you know what they want, and you've dished that out. What's your experience over the last 2.5 years of how Tier 3, Tier 4 is consuming content on old Balaji, that app? Because that's probably a newer game compared to the past.
I actually look at it this way, that old Balaji's content is very different from Balaji content.
Of course.
So we've actually been trolled for it also. So Mars is completely like, our app is so male and youth based. Of course, we have dramas, and of course we have a lot of it. But if you see it's Class of 2020, Aparan, or any of the other hit shows like Bekabu, Bandi Baat, or even the way we've tried to build our youth section with Punch Beat and our romantic section like Kene Ko Hum Safar Hai. These shows would not run on TV. An extramarital affair show like Kene Ko Hum Safar Hai would not run on TV because the wife would feel embarrassed to watch it in front of her husband. Even in urban household where these shows run, mass urban overlap households, they are slightly different from television content, but they are for the masses also.
Now, do you differentiate into age groups? I'm just trying to guess.
Oh, absolutely. To the point, age groups, locality, type, thought processes, everything from the aspirational small town Indian male viewer to a non-aspirational realist Indian male viewer, small town mid tier 2, tier 3. Every kind of audience is catered to, you know. So the psychology just changes. It's nothing like television.
Yeah, I understood. Okay. What about the other business, the movie production business? I guess last 3 months would have hit it badly. How do you see it returning to normalcy?
Because we actually didn't have any big releases to I would call misfortune turned fortune. And we had 2 films which were mid-sized, small-sized films, which were anyway meant for the eclectic viewer. And so finding a direct to OTT platform served its purpose because it reached the same audience that we were planning to cater to in theaters. So Dolly Kitty or Chamakte Sitare is now going to be on Netflix, and we have one more film that is in advanced stage of discussion with the OTT platform.
You reckon this trend is here to stay, releasing movies which seem mainstream on apps?
I look at this as an absolutely pro business because anyway, the cost, the P&A cost for small film was almost as much, or at least 70% of the cost of the film. Then to cover that in the theater and not cover that, I mean, it's really weird, but it's true that a theater charges the same $200 for a Salman Khan film and as for a small film, which is not really right for the small film because that film is meant for an audience which is eclectic, but at the same time, if you wanted to reach the masses, they would have to make a choice between 2 films, and they would choose the larger, the more what should I say, communal viewing platform film, communal viewing film over a film which has a more individualistic niche audience or taste. This way, it's available on OTT. And people don't have to judge it with its box office collections. They can catch it at their time. They don't have to have that 2-week window. It can grow with word of mouth. It then gets its own life. Some of this content gets better viewership than the large-scale films on digital platforms. And I think this actually gives birth to a whole new revenue stream where sometimes you don't have to go and do your P&A and release in the theaters, but do a great film straight for an OTT platform. So again, it builds more respectability for smaller films and people who want to like hone their arts and do a film which really should not be subjected to box office collections.
No, the reason I ask this is because some of the best urban movies that I've seen over the last 2 years have been actually these small films as opposed to the mainstream cinema. So my question is, for a production house, would you be more tempted to actually have a larger proportion of your products as the non-mainstream app release movies?
So actually, it's going to be a bit of both because as a company, try to do both. And large.
But could there be a shift compared to the past?
Large-scale films, you get a higher revenue in theaters and a better sale on OTT platforms. But the smaller scale films get what I would say, because they're cost effective mostly, they get almost most of their costs covered by OTT platforms. Now, tomorrow, when theaters open up, sometimes you'll just probably do a 1 week 300 screen release just for the sake of it and see that people catch the film in the theater that week. But if they don't, the lifespan of the film has not ended. It has continued. So like the urban Indian would choose an eclectic smart film over a mass entertainer, but the basic family going, communal viewing Indian audiences going for the big films. That does not take away the life or the commerce of the small film. I'm just saying this way the small films get a longer lifespan.
So from a production house perspective, I would now get more linearity to your revenue stream because you can produce small, do it quite regularly, and therefore it's not subject to
you know what, you can do a lot more films because you have a digital OTT revenue stream opened up, which can be a direct to OTT. But I think for any production house, a large scale, big size, big ticket film, if it gets a great pre-sale and it has a certain MG given by distributors on theatrical, I think it works both ways. I think eventually it's perfect to film. If I take a film and if I don't price it right, keeping in mind the pre-sales and keeping in mind that I keep very little dependency to the on the theatrical, it can happen for a small or a big film. So film to film.
Okay. I'm presuming, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Ekta, but by your answers that the, for lack of a better word, the margins or the ROI on a big film in a theater release is more than the ROI on a small movie in a OTT platform, or is it vice versa?
See, like
presuming both are equally successful.
Okay, both are equally successful. There's a cap to an OTT platform release because eventually you've sold the film at a 15% margin, but in a film which does extremely well, the ROI can be enormous after a theatrical.
Okay. Thanks for letting me know that. So what about Balaji henceforth? You've had a terrific year on the operational front, FY20 or FY19. Where do we go from here? Any thoughts? Any broad production numbers, not exact down to the decimal?
The idea is to play out your OTT game a little more aggressively without affecting the bottom line at all, and seeing to it that you don't like burn your cash that you have in reserves, but you still go a little more aggressive with the OTT platform. Films who are probably going to be having 4 or 5 releases next year, because we believe that there's going to be a big surge into the theaters after the pandemic ends. And we're not planning to release any big films anyways or start any films till mid next year. So we believe by mid next year there's going to be a big switch, and the need to actually go out would be far greater. And the first year of films after that will really benefit from it, But keeping in mind that what if that does not happen, most of the films that we are starting with working on getting the pre-sales sorted so that there's very little dependency on the theatrical business. And then of course our TV business, which is going into, we're back into doing 6 shows, we're going to go into 8 shows and keeping a so-called cash cow going so that it can fund our OTT platform.
Wish you all the best for that. More importantly, thanks for taking the time out and giving us some sense of this very differentiated business.
I just feel that content is now going to be, with more platforms opening up and with more, lifespan given to content. You don't have to view it today, tomorrow. You can see it after 6 months, 8 months. The viability of content is going up. As a B2C business, we now know that the OTT platforms are here to stay, and I feel the synergies between the different mediums is going to be where the real play out is going to be fun. A film will release in theaters, not do well, but make a killing for the OTT platform, and just for that reason, it can have a franchise creation. So it's going to be interesting times to see how people consume content, and a new stream of content viewing is going to be in play, which is the individual content.
Well, and I wish you all the best for tapping all of those very, very well. Thank you so much for speaking to us today.
Thank you so much, Niraj, for having me on.